Hi everyone, I am Juliana. I am a yoga mentor. I've been a yoga teacher for over 10 years and I'm super passionate about helping yoga teachers step into their power, gain confidence teaching so that they can keep their students coming back for more. I'm so happy you're here. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to keep your students coming back for more. So make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn that notification bell on so you know every time I make a new YouTube video. So the first thing is to really build connections and relationships with your students. You probably hear this all the time, create community, create community. But one of my favorite authors, Brene Brown, talks about in her book called Dare to Lead, which I highly recommend if you're a yoga teacher, about the difference between preaching a value and actually matching behaviors to the value. So what I've experienced a lot in the yoga world is a lot of studios and teachers say they love community and say they build community, but then they don't always have actions or behaviors that align with that. And so one of the best ways to build relationships and build community with your students is to know your students' names, right? Do you know the names of your students? Are you introducing yourself to every single person who comes into your class? This is really, really important to build relationships with your students. So I invite you to, anytime you have a new student in your class, to go up and introduce yourself and ask them questions. Something like, what inspired you to start yoga? And hear their why. Why are they coming on their mat? And if they have done yoga before, maybe ask them what is their favorite yoga pose, right? So ask them questions to actually get to know them. And then what I recommend is remember things about your students and ask them about it next time you see them. This makes people feel so special, right? Oh my God, they remembered me. I matter. I'm important. This is really, really, really key. This is really how you create community and put it into action, not just as something that you say, right? You know your students' names, you're asking them questions, you're remembering things about them, you're asking them next time you see them. Now, the next one is super, super key. Now that you know their name and you've begun to build a little rapport with them, it's really, really important that you give them individualized feedback throughout class, right? Use their name. And there's different types of feedback that you can give. The first is verbal adjustments or verbal feedback. You can say, Juliana, great job. You got it. Or Juliana, bend your knee so your ankle comes right underneath your knee, right? So you can use a verbal adjustment to encourage a student or a verbal adjustment to correct a student who might be doing a pose that could help them, they might be doing a pose that may cause injury, right? You also could give them an individual adjustment by, if you realize that they're not getting the verbal cues, they might be a visual learner, right? So you might go over next to them and do the pose along with them, right? And then of course, with consent, you can give them a hands-on adjustment, right? So any type of individualized feedback to your students is really, really key, because let's be honest, this is what makes taking a yoga class at a studio or live on Zoom different than watching a YouTube video, right? That you're actually looking at your students and you're giving them individualized feedback. So this is one really, really important way to build a relationship with your students, right? And then this is really good too, because you can let your students know that you see their progress, right? So at my yoga studio, I used to teach a beginner yoga class. It was an 8-week beginner yoga curriculum, and I would acknowledge my students when they would be able to make progress in that, and they would feel so good, and they'd also get excited. Like for chaturanga, I would always teach it with bringing their shoulders to blocks, and they would get so excited when they could finally take their shoulders to the blocks. And after class, I would definitely make sure to acknowledge them and let them know, like, hey, I see your progress, right? It really, really means a lot, right? So this is also another way to build relationships and community with your students. And then something else you can do is, if you notice that a particular student is maybe doing a pose that could incorrectly, that might injure them, instead of calling them out in class, maybe they need a little bit more one-on-one attention, you can go up to them after class and say, hey, Juliana, I noticed a few things about your downward facing dog. Is it okay if I help give you some feedback on it? And then you can literally walk them through whatever things you want to tell them after class. And this will go so far and only take a minute of your time, right? But it will go so far with your students. And then another really important thing of how you build relationships with your students is after class, ask your students how they feel, right? How do they feel? And not just ask a few people, but ask every single person, right? I mean, if you have 100 students in your class, it might be hard, but if your classes are more like maximum 15, like make it that space where people can share, right? So these are some really tangible ways that you can actually build relationship and community with your students, right? Know their names, ask them questions, give them individualized feedback. If that's a verbal adjustment, go next to their mat and show them adjustment, or a hands-on adjustment, acknowledge their progress, right? And after class, ask them how they feel, right? Are you doing those things? And if you're not doing any of them, don't worry, you're not alone. We're not really trained on how to build relationships with our students in our yoga teacher training. Let me know in the comments which one of those things that you'd be willing to actually implement. The second thing to do is create a journey for your students, right? Create a journey. It's Tony Robbins that says progress equals happiness. Progress equals happiness, not perfection, progress. So we really want our students to feel like they are making progress. And you want to create a journey for them. They want to learn something new in the classes. They want to know that you are taking them on this journey, right? And so the best way to do that is within your weekly class is to create a series, right? So I'll give you an example. For example, I used to teach Monday nights for 3 years, 7:30 p.m. Vinyasa Flow. So within my weekly class that was on my yoga studio schedule, I would teach a chakra series for 8 weeks. So for 7 of the weeks, we'd go through one of the chakras. On the 8th week, we'd put it all together. Then I taught a flexibility series to get into splits, right? And so I was creating a journey, an experience for my students where they, left feeling like they were learning something, and then 2, they could really see their progress, right? In the split series, they could see how much deeper they got into splits pose, right? So create a journey for your students and make sure in every class you're teaching them something new they want to learn. And the third thing is give them something to look forward to. So at the end of class, let them know what they'll be learning next week, right? So it could be something like next week in our Vinyasa Flow class, we're going to be doing the sacral chakra where we'll open the hips and we'll allow you to tap into your creativity and feel all your feelings, right? So they have something to look forward to, something that they're excited about. These are my top 3 things for how to keep your students coming back for more. Let me know in the comments if you guys have any suggestions on how you keep your students coming back for more, and I would really love to hear which one of these you'd be willing to implement, right? Because that's the most important thing, is actually taking a piece of this knowledge and acting on it in your classes and turning the knowledge into wisdom. So I hope that this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.